Welcome to the new video of Neurophilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The weight no one names. There is a kind of suffering that rarely gets named because it does not look dramatic from the outside. It is quiet. It is functional. It hides behind "I'm just tired" and "I'm fine." But inside, it feels like carrying an invisible load everywhere you go. Not a sadness you can point to. Not a simple lack of sleep. Not even anxiety in the usual sense. More like gravity has increased, and your body is the first to notice. You wake up already tired, as if the night did not restore you, but merely paused the pressure. Opening your eyes feels like returning to a job you never clocked out of. Getting out of bed is not a neutral action. It is a decision that costs something. And once you stand, the day does not feel open. It feels heavy, dense, crowded, like every small task has gained weight. A shower becomes a project. Responding to messages becomes a burden. Preparing a meal feels like a mountain. You might stare at the simplest things: laundry, dishes, a short email, a phone call, and feel a strange resistance rise in your chest as if your body is saying, "Not now, I can't, I don't have it." Even pleasant things start to feel expensive. Music, social plans, a hobby you used to enjoy. You want them, but your energy is missing in a way that does not feel like ordinary laziness. It feels like the system that once carried you has started to weaken quietly. This is where the real cruelty begins. Not the heaviness itself, but the interpretation you attach to it. Because when you do not understand what is happening, you assume it must be your character. You start blaming your discipline. You start judging your willpower. You take your exhaustion personally. You also start comparing yourself. You watch other people move through the day, reply quickly, handle responsibilities, plan, cook, work, laugh, and you conclude that something is wrong with you. Not with your situation, not with your nervous system, with you. And that conclusion becomes a second burden. Shame layered over fatigue, self-attack layered over depletion. In your head, the accusations begin to sound like facts. I'm weak, I'm lazy, I'm falling behind. I used to be better than this. And the more you repeat those sentences, the heavier the heaviness becomes. Because now the body is not only exhausted, it is also being threatened internally. Even your own mind becomes another source of pressure. But what if the story is wrong? What if what you call weakness is not a moral defect at all? What if it is a legitimate signal, physiological, real, measurable, of a nervous system that has been under stress for too long? What if the weight you feel is not proof that you are failing, but proof that your body has been surviving? This possibility changes everything because it replaces shame with understanding. It stops treating your exhaustion like a personality flaw and starts treating it like information. The body does not collapse for entertainment. It collapses when it is overloaded, when it has been asked to stay alert for too long, when it has been forced to interpret too much as urgent, too much as dangerous, too much as "you must handle this now." When that happens, the body begins to behave differently. It conserves energy. It slows you down. It makes simple tasks feel hard, not because you are incapable, but because your system is protecting what little capacity remains. That protection can feel like paralysis. It can feel like numbness. It can feel like a fog that makes basic actions take enormous effort. And the most confusing part is that rest does not always fix it. You can sleep and still feel tired. You can take a break and still feel drained. Because the root problem is not always the number of tasks. Sometimes the root problem is the internal state you are carrying while you face the tasks. An internal state of constant threat. This is why the first step is not be stronger. The first step is to stop misreading the signal. The heaviness is not proof that you are broken. It is often proof that your body has been trying to keep you going without enough recovery, safety, or regulation. So chapter 1 begins with a simple truth. If everything feels heavy, it does not automatically mean you are failing at life. It may mean your body is asking for help in the only language it can speak: energy, tension, fatigue, resistance, and weight. And once you hear that message clearly, you can stop punishing yourself for it and start doing what actually works. Supporting the system that has been carrying you for too long, alone in silence. Survival mode, when the body learns that everything is a threat. Behind the feeling of constant heaviness, there is not a mystery, and there is certainly not a lack of character. There is a biological process. When pressure becomes continuous rather than temporary, the body does exactly what it was designed to do. It prepares for danger. The problem is that in modern life, the danger rarely ends. The human nervous system evolved to respond to short bursts of threat. A predator appears, the body mobilizes. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, attention narrows. Once the danger passes, the system returns to baseline. Energy is restored, balance returns. This cycle worked because threats were intense but brief. Modern stress breaks this design. Deadlines, financial uncertainty, caregiving responsibilities, emotional labor, unresolved grief, constant notifications, and internal self-pressure do not come and go cleanly. They linger. And when stress lingers, the nervous system never receives the signal that it is safe to stand down. The body remains in a state of alert long after the original threat has passed, or even when the threat is no longer external at all. This state is often called survival mode. Biologically, it is driven by the stress response system that releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals are not harmful by nature. In the short term, they are protective. They mobilize glucose, sharpen focus, and prepare the body to act. But they are expensive. They consume energy at a rate meant for emergencies, not daily life. When survival mode becomes chronic, the body begins to pay the price. Breathing becomes shallow, reducing oxygen exchange and increasing fatigue. Muscles stay partially contracted, creating a constant background tension that drains energy even at rest. Digestion slows, which affects nutrient absorption and gut-brain signaling. Sleep becomes lighter and less restorative because the nervous system never fully disengages from vigilance. The mind stays on edge, scanning for what might go wrong next. Over time, this produces a specific subjective experience. Life feels heavy, not symbolically heavy, but physically dense. Thinking takes effort. Deciding feels exhausting. Even neutral tasks start to feel threatening, not because they are difficult, but because the system interpreting them is already overloaded. This is why people in survival mode often say, "I don't know why I'm like this." Nothing terrible is happening right now. The danger is no longer the situation. The danger is the internal state that has learned to expect danger everywhere. At this point, the body begins to conserve energy in ways that are often misunderstood. It reduces motivation. It limits emotional range. It suppresses creativity and pleasure. These are not failures. They are protective shutdowns. From the nervous system's perspective, joy and exploration are luxuries. Safety comes first. This is how people end up feeling like they are living on autopilot. They function, but they do not feel present. They do what is necessary, but nothing more. They are not choosing this numbness. Their physiology is prioritizing survival over vitality. What makes this state especially dangerous is how it reinforces itself. The longer the nervous system stays in survival mode, the more familiar it becomes. High tension becomes normal. Constant urgency becomes the baseline. The body forgets what safety feels like, and interpretation plays a critical role here. Research highlighted by Kelly McGonigal shows that how we think about stress changes how it affects the body. When stress is interpreted as harmful and overwhelming, the physiological response intensifies. Cortisol levels rise higher. Inflammation increases. The system becomes more toxic. In contrast, when stress is understood as a signal that the body is mobilizing to help, the response shifts. Blood vessels remain more relaxed. The heart works more efficiently. The body enters a state of challenge rather than threat. The same pressure exists, but the internal damage is reduced. This means the weight you feel is not only about what you are carrying, it is also about what your body believes the load means. If every obligation is interpreted as a threat, survival mode stays active. If pressure is interpreted as preparation, the system remains more flexible. The most important realization is this: survival mode is not your enemy. It is an outdated strategy being applied to a modern environment. The nervous system is doing its best with the information it has been given. And the good news is that systems that can learn can also relearn. Survival mode is not permanent. It is trainable. The body can be taught through consistent, concrete signals that not everything is an emergency. But before that retraining can happen, one thing must be clear. You are not broken. Your body is not betraying you. It is responding exactly as it was designed to respond to prolonged threat. Understanding this is not just comforting, it is the foundation of change. Because once you stop fighting your nervous system and start working with it, you can begin to guide it out of survival and back toward regulation, safety, and lightness. And that process begins with the fastest signal of safety the body understands: breath. The fastest signal of safety. Reclaiming the body through breath. When the body has been living in survival mode, it does not respond well to explanations or motivation. You cannot talk it out of fear. You cannot shame it into calm. The nervous system does not understand logic in moments of threat. It understands signals. And among all the signals available to you, none is as immediate, accessible, and powerful as breath. Breathing is often dismissed as a relaxation trick, something soft or symbolic. In reality, it is one of the most direct ways to communicate with the autonomic nervous system. Unlike thoughts or emotions, breathing sits at the intersection of conscious control and automatic regulation. You can choose how you breathe, and that choice sends real-time information to the brain about whether the environment is safe or dangerous. In survival mode, breathing changes without permission. It becomes shallow, rapid, and mostly confined to the upper chest. This pattern tells the brain that something is wrong. Oxygen exchange becomes less efficient, carbon dioxide tolerance drops, and the nervous system stays alert. Over time, this breathing style alone can maintain anxiety and exhaustion, even if external stress decreases. This is where intentional breathing becomes a physiological intervention rather than a mental exercise. At the center of this process is the vagus nerve, a major communication pathway between the brain and the body. The vagus nerve plays a critical role in activating the parasympathetic system, often described as the rest and digest mode. When this system is engaged, heart rate slows, muscle tension reduces, digestion improves, and the mind regains flexibility. The body shifts from preparing for danger to allowing recovery. Breathing is one of the few ways to stimulate this system on demand. The most effective breathing patterns for regulation share one key feature. The exhale is longer than the inhale. This detail matters because extended exhalation increases vagal tone, sending a clear signal to the brain that the threat has passed. The body does not need reassurance in words. It needs timing, rhythm, and repetition. A simple and effective protocol follows this structure. Inhale slowly through the nose. Pause briefly, then exhale gently for longer than you inhaled. This cycle repeated consistently begins to interrupt the survival response. The goal is not to force relaxation, but to restore the body's ability to shift states. When practiced for even a few minutes, many people notice a subtle but significant change. The chest softens, the jaw loosens, the internal pressure decreases, thoughts slow just enough to create space. This is not imagination. It is the nervous system recalibrating. What makes this practice powerful is not the immediate relief, but the cumulative effect. Survival mode is learned through repetition. Regulation is relearned the same way. Each breathing session is a message repeated to the body. We are safe enough to slow down. Over time, that message begins to stick. People who practice regulated breathing regularly often report unexpected changes. Simple tasks stop triggering panic. Decisions feel less overwhelming. Sleep becomes deeper. The constant sense of being chased by the day begins to fade. They do not suddenly have more energy because life is easier. They have more energy because their bodies are no longer burning fuel unnecessarily. It is important to understand what this practice is not. It is not avoidance. It is not passivity. It is not surrender. Breathing does not make you weaker. It makes your system more efficient. A regulated nervous system responds better to challenges than an exhausted one. This is why breath work is often described as reclaiming physiological autonomy. Instead of being at the mercy of automatic stress reactions, you regain influence over your internal state. You stop reacting to every stimulus as if it were a crisis. You begin choosing when to mobilize and when to recover. Of course, breathing alone is not a complete solution. It opens the door, but it does not walk you through the house. Regulation requires multiple signals of safety delivered consistently in ways the body understands. Breath is the first signal because it works quickly. It proves to the nervous system that change is possible. It creates a window in which other practices, movement, connection, structure, can actually take root. Without this window, advice feels overwhelming. With it, the system becomes receptive again. This is why Chapter 3 matters so deeply. Before you try to fix your life, optimize your habits, or push yourself forward, you must first show your body that it is no longer under attack. Breath is not the end of the journey. It is the first moment the body believes the journey is safe to begin. Release, not pressure. Movement and connection as antidotes to overload. When everything feels heavy, the body tends to choose one of two extremes. It either collapses into withdrawal or tries to force its way forward through sheer effort. Both reactions make sense. Both are attempts to escape the discomfort, and both, in a state of chronic overload, often make things worse. The instinct to push harder is especially common. Many people believe that the solution to heaviness is more discipline, more productivity, more intensity. If they can just force themselves to act, exercise harder, work longer, or snap out of it, the weight will lift. But a nervous system already living in survival mode does not interpret pressure as motivation. It interprets it as confirmation of danger. From a physiological perspective, chronic stress floods the body with hormones designed for short-term emergencies. Cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline mobilize energy quickly, but they are meant to be used and cleared. When these hormones remain in circulation without release, they become toxic. The body stays tense, the heart stays on edge, and exhaustion deepens. This is why rest alone often does not help. Lying still does not metabolize stress chemistry. Suppressing action without discharge leaves the system loaded. The body is full of go signals with nowhere to go. This is where regenerative movement becomes essential. Not intense workouts, not punishment exercise, not performance-driven routines. Regenerative movement is gentle, rhythmic, and safe. It activates muscles and circulation just enough to signal completion to the stress response. The body gets the message. We moved, we survived, the cycle can close. A slow walk is one of the most powerful examples. When you walk at an easy pace, breathing naturally, feeling your feet contact the ground, you engage multiple regulatory systems at once. Muscles metabolize stress hormones. Blood flow improves. Sensory input increases. The nervous system shifts from threat monitoring to environmental awareness. Stretching, light yoga, and simple mobility exercises work the same way. They do not demand performance. They invite presence. And presence is incompatible with panic. Another critical element of regenerative movement is light. Exposure to natural daylight during gentle activity helps regulate circadian rhythms, supporting sleep quality and hormone balance. This is not a lifestyle hack. It is basic biological alignment. When practiced consistently, this kind of movement creates a subtle but profound shift. Energy returns gradually. Mental clarity improves. Tasks feel more accessible. The body no longer resists movement as fiercely because movement no longer feels like punishment. But there is another force that keeps survival mode alive even when breathing and movement improve. Isolation. When people feel overwhelmed, they often pull away from others. They do not want to explain themselves. They do not want to burden anyone. They conserve energy by withdrawing. Over time, messages go unanswered. Invitations are declined. Connection fades quietly. The nervous system interprets this withdrawal as danger. From an evolutionary standpoint, isolation meant vulnerability. Being alone increased the risk of harm. The brain still carries this logic. Chronic loneliness activates the same neural circuits associated with physical pain. It increases inflammation. It amplifies stress responses. It deepens the sense of weight. This is why no amount of solo self-care fully resolves chronic overload. The body needs signals of safety, and one of the strongest signals is human connection. But connection does not have to be overwhelming to be effective. In fact, the nervous system responds best to what could be called micro-connections, brief, genuine interactions that communicate safety without draining energy. A short conversation with someone who listens without judgment. A message that says, "I'm thinking of you." A moment of shared presence. Even physical touch, like a brief hug, can release oxytocin, a hormone that directly calms the stress response and reduces amygdala activity. These moments matter more than they seem. They tell the body, you are not carrying this alone. And when that message lands, the nervous system softens. The internal load redistributes. It is important to choose these connections carefully. Not all social interaction is regulating. Superficial or draining relationships can increase stress. What matters is quality, not quantity. One or two safe people, contacted briefly but consistently, can make a measurable difference. Regenerative movement and genuine connection work together. Movement discharges stress chemistry. Connection restores a sense of belonging. Both reduce the internal perception of threat. This chapter carries a central message. The body does not heal through force. It heals through signals of safety repeated over time. When you stop pushing against your own exhaustion and start releasing what has been stored, the weight begins to lift. Not because life is lighter, but because your system is no longer bracing for impact at every step. And yet, even with breath, movement, and connection, many people remain overwhelmed. The final piece lies in how you structure your days and interpret the stress that remains. That is where true integration begins. From weight to strength, reframing stress and reclaiming control. Even after learning to regulate the body through breath, movement, and connection, many people still feel overwhelmed by their days. The pressure returns the moment responsibilities line up again. Emails pile up. Decisions wait. The familiar weight creeps back in. This does not mean the previous steps failed. It means there is one final layer that determines whether stress turns into collapse or becomes something you can carry. That layer is interpretation and structure. Most people organize their lives as if time were flat and infinite, expecting the same level of performance from their bodies at every hour. They treat every task as equally urgent, every request as immediate, every demand as non-negotiable. The nervous system responds exactly as you would expect, with panic. When everything is a priority, the body experiences the entire day as a single, unbroken threat. But the body does not operate on clocks alone. It operates on energy rhythms. Human physiology follows natural cycles of focus and fatigue, often lasting 90 to 120 minutes. During these cycles, there are windows of higher capacity and periods when the brain needs recovery. Ignoring these rhythms is like trying to drive without stopping for fuel. Eventually, the system stalls. Reclaiming control begins by shifting from time management to energy management. Instead of asking, "What do I need to do today?" you begin asking, "When does my body have the capacity to do this?" This is where task batching becomes powerful. Rather than switching constantly between different types of work, emails, planning, creative tasks, conversations, you group similar tasks together. Analytical work is done during energy peaks. Routine or administrative tasks are placed in lower energy windows. Demanding decisions are not scattered randomly across the day. This simple restructuring has a deep physiological effect. The nervous system stops interpreting the day as chaotic. Predictability increases. A sense of control returns. The body no longer braces for constant interruption. Importantly, honoring low energy periods is just as crucial as using high energy ones. Many people try to force productivity during natural dips, which leads to decision fatigue and emotional exhaustion. When the body asks for lighter activity, responding with lighter tasks or brief recovery prevents overload. This is not laziness, it is biological intelligence. But structure alone is not enough. The way you interpret stress itself can either undo all this work or amplify its benefits. For years, stress has been framed as the enemy, something corrosive, destructive, and inherently harmful. This belief feels logical, but research suggests it is incomplete. Stress is not automatically damaging. What often causes harm is believing that stress means something is wrong with you. When your heart races before a difficult conversation, your body is mobilizing energy. When tension rises before responsibility, your system is preparing. These reactions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of engagement. But if the mind labels them as failure or collapse, the nervous system escalates the alarm. More cortisol is released. More tension builds. The weight intensifies. This is where stress reframing changes everything. When you consciously reinterpret stress responses as preparation rather than danger, the body responds differently. Blood vessels remain more open. The heart works more efficiently. Focus improves instead of fragmenting. The same pressure exists, but it is processed as a challenge rather than a threat. This is not denial. You are not pretending things are easy. You are recognizing that discomfort does not equal damage. Stress signals become information, not accusations. Over time, this shift has lasting effects. Studies show that people who view stress as a resource rather than a toxin experience better health outcomes, recover more quickly from adversity, and maintain resilience under pressure. They do not live easier lives. They live in better alignment with their physiology. At this stage, something important happens. The narrative changes. Instead of waking up thinking, I can't handle today, you begin thinking, my body is preparing me to meet today. That single sentence alters the internal environment. It reduces self-attack. It preserves energy. It keeps the nervous system from turning on itself. Taken together, the practices of regulation, movement, connection, structure, and reframing form a new relationship with stress. You stop fighting your body as if it were the enemy. You start cooperating with it as an intelligent system responding to its conditions. This is how weight becomes strength, not through toughness, but through understanding. Not through forcing yourself to endure more, but through stopping the strategies that quietly exhaust you. You do not need to wait for life to become lighter before you begin. You can begin now by working with your biology instead of against it. The goal is not to eliminate stress, but to carry it without breaking, supported by a nervous system that knows how to return to safety. And that is the real freedom. Not a life without pressure, but a body and mind that no longer collapse under it.